if the reason you're doing this is to make a lot of money, is to make a name for yourself, it will not last, because our hearts were not made to worship work or money or possessions, because they're not the most valuable things.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Second Society podcast. If you want to go deep in conversation, find out what your soul's purpose in life is, then you're going to want to listen to this week's podcast. I get to sit down with a good friend of mine, David Reynosa from Forestry Films, who is just an abundance of knowledge. And we kind of dive into some incredible topics that I think are going to blow your mind. So without further ado, let's dive into this week's podcast. I have one of the most incredible filmmakers out there, a good friend of mine, someone who I look up to big time in the wedding industry. We got David Reynosa from Forestry Films here with us today. David, how you going, man?
I'm doing good. I'm pumped to be here. I know we kind of connected in person for the first time at Venture like a year or so ago. And yeah, dude, I just love, first, you're an incredible filmmaker who I look up to. And then not only that, but just the whole platform of Second Society is really what this industry needs so much. So I'm stoked to be here to talk about whatever we have on our plate with second shooting, making money as a filmmaker, and just get into all the things.
I appreciate it, man. Honestly, like every time we have a conversation, I feel like we could talk for, I think we do talk for hours, actually.
We literally had like a podcast before this podcast started.
Yeah. We are at minute 52 right now, and we're just starting. So that gives you some insight for what is about to come. Like I say in every single email, like whenever you talk, I listen, because I think you bring just so much wisdom that this industry needs. So I'm excited to talk to you today. You know, this podcast is really made to make shooters better, become the top 1% in our industry. I think the biggest gap we have in our industry is lousy second shooters that, you know, just show up and have different motives than are needed. You know, we need somebody that's going to show up and serve us as a lead shooter, serve the clients really well, know how to act in front of a coordinator, know how to act in front of other vendors and the family members. You know, there's just like certain things that you think is almost common sense, but unfortunately it's not. And so I'm here to talk to you today about what that looks like from your perspective of becoming a top 1% shooter in the industry.
I completely relate with all these things that you're kind of presenting of there are so many poor second shooters. And that's, I think, holding a lot of just business owners back, because if you can find a reliable third, second lead, you can grow your business exponentially. But the problem is, as I'm sure everyone's listening, if you've ever tried to just find someone, it is hard. If you do a casting call on Instagram or on Facebook, you're sorting through hundreds of people and you click on someone's profile and you think they're kind of cool, but then you see their work or you see them on the wedding day and just something doesn't click. And it's kind of funny. I started the first 2 years of my business was mainly second shooting and lead shooting. And I tell most beginner filmmakers that is the best way to go in terms of growing your craft and making money quickly, because it's way easier to second and lead shoot than to start a business from the ground up. It typically takes 3 to 5 years to really get a business going to where you have all your income coming in from, say, your main wedding business. What I did is I found a company in my area around the first year or two of my business who was doing just weddings at volume. They were probably doing like 50 to 60 weddings a year, and they had multiple lead shooters, and I was just one of them. And I would literally show up on the weekend, and their style was all glide cam at the time. So when people were using glide cam, they didn't even have gimbals. It was all glide cam, all slow motion. So literally I would shoot the entire day, no audio, all slow motion in LA, and just, you know, the spinning gimbal moves, the whole thing. And through doing that, I learned how to talk with couples, how to work with planners. It gave me some freedom to make some mistakes that I wouldn't have necessarily wanted to make with my own brand, which is kind of a weird way to say, like, of course you don't want to go in and shoot for someone else and make these horrible mistakes, but it also gives you just some freedom to take the pressure off yourself to say, okay, I'm going to lead shoot for a company that has a very particular style, and I just follow that rubric, and I don't have to think about, making this whole brand. It just gets you into that rhythm and flow.
It gives you an opportunity to get in a room and, completely serve the lead shooter for what they need, or in this case, the company. But then also it gives you so many opportunities after 10 weddings of second shooting for someone. You kind of build up this list in your head of like, oh, I would do that in my own wedding. Right. Or like, I wouldn't do that approach. You know what I mean? Or I would make this move a little bit differently. So when it does come time to where you're taking on lead shooting, or if you're filming your own wedding, you have all this practice and all this knowledge and experience that you've experienced kind of just like sitting on the back seat and watching from afar and taking mental notes on the day of. And now you can actually apply that to your own weddings.
But I would say there's two aspects. One is when I'm looking for second shooters or lead shooters, I want their style to closely match mine, which I think is pretty common. You've talked about it on your podcast before. You have that in your ebook. Pretty common knowledge. If you want to succeed as a second shooter, you got to earmark the companies you want to work for and then make sure your whole aesthetic matches theirs, because that's the first thing people are looking for. Yeah. But I think way more important, that's never talked about, is learning the skill of being a really good friend. Because the second shooters I constantly bring back on are ones that I want to hang out with outside of the wedding day, and are ones that, like, my favorite memories with second shooters are like, I flew a guy out. I could tell his aesthetic was similar, but he was way in the beginner tier of wedding filmmaking. But I could tell from his Instagram that he liked similar music that I liked. I could tell he had a good eye, but maybe didn't have the camera knowledge. And I was flying out to Utah to do an elopement. And I knew that the person I flew out with me most of the time was going to be like hanging out. And so I picked that person who had a similar style. And I'm like, oh, I could have a 1-day workshop before the wedding and kind of teach him the ins and outs of my camera gear. And that's kind of the person I chose initially. And some of my best moments from that wedding were not him setting up a camera for the ceremony or doing audio or at the reception, even though he did all those things extremely well because he was really reliable, but was driving back home from the wedding. We're in Utah. There's like a lightning storm happening, and we're like blaring music, just like having a great time. And like we're staying in the same hotel room, and we're showing each other wedding films. And we just left being like really great friends. And my second shooters that I always bring back are friends. All the technical stuff they can learn. I can teach them. I'm just really looking for a passion for the art and just someone who's fun to talk with. So kind of contrary to popular belief is to become a good second shooter. There's all the advice of, okay, watch all the YouTube videos, buy all the courses, really hone in your style, all important things because they have to be there. But if you find yourself stuck, what may be a better option is look in your personal life and say, am I a good friend? Do I have a couple key best friends who just love hanging out with me? Or am I kind of a loner? Do I kind of find it hard to make friends? Those are skills. A lot of people think being a good hang, being a good people person, being a good friend is just something you're born with. It is not. It is a skill, people skills, empathetic skills, friendship skills. They're things just like shooting that you learn. And if you take the time to learn those skills and treat it as if you're trying to study a new camera, that's going to do way more for your second shooting, way more for your business than any, YouTube video.
Dang. David dropping bombs right now. Let me ask you this. Do you believe in participation trophies?
No. If it's my daughter, maybe.
I love it. Maybe after age 6, we drop this off.
It's almost become friends with filmmakers first, and second shooting and lead shooting will just come out of that.
Flow, 100%. That's super cool. Anything else that you think you would want to add to a top 1% shooter?
Yeah, I'll go because I kind of gave a 2-pronged answer. I said first was style on point, and then was friendship. So let's talk a little bit about like style, because I think that is something we can get in the weeds with a little bit.
Cool.
Is if you want to get into the high-end luxury market, you want to figure out who are those filmmakers in your area, write them down, go to their Instagram page, and really start to like copy that style. And I would say a huge thing too is you want to dress the part. You've talked about this before, but if you want to work for an adventurous elopement indie brand, and you kind of look like your favorite, you just don't have a great interior design taste, you don't have a good fashion taste, your music taste is kind of basic, it's going to be hard to get those jobs because they're going to go onto your Instagram and they're going to see, one, I don't think I'd be friends with this person because their just personal life tastes are a little different than mine. And then two, usually people's personal life tastes blend into their business. And so you're just going to be a mismatch. And a lot of people think, oh, my taste is just something I am. It's not something I can change. It's not something I can work on. And that is totally wrong. Like, I had horrible, atrocious taste when I first started out wedding filmmaking. My brand was Love Shot Productions. It had a horrible logo, like a teal heart with a red heart in the middle. And it was just Cinderella-y and Disney. It was horrible. And I looked up to people who I would consider as cool. And most people look at cool people and say, they're just cool. That's just who they are. They were born cool. It looks effortless. I can never be cool. I'm just going to be the best me I can be, which there is a place for that because you don't want to be a carbon copy. But there's also a reason why these people are cool. There's a reason why these people are sought out. And a lot of it has to do with how they speak, how they carry themselves, how they dress, and the aesthetics of their composition and their coloring. Like those are some of the main things. And all of those things can be broken down. And the simple way, what I noticed with a lot of filmmakers is how they dress is a big one, is a huge one. You can tell so much from a person based on how they dress. If you just change your wardrobe, I can almost guarantee you that it's going to get you more second shooting jobs, like guaranteed. And I know so many guys like don't want to do that. It's kind of a cop out. Trust me, it will do wonders for second shooting, for your brand. And then girls, same thing. Girls tend to be a little bit better at this just because girls are a little more, innate in fashion. But I still see the same thing with some girls where they know how to dress, but it's not in a current way. It's not in a way that the second shooters or the lead shooters they really want to work with are dressing. Most of our wedding clients are between the ages of 20 and like 35 is kind of like the main marriage age. Of course, there's outliers, but 20 to 35-year-olds, just that demographic is usually very keyed in to current trends and fashion. And if they see someone who looks like they're 45 and up and how they present themselves, sometimes it can be a big, kind of disconnect there. So that would be like the first thing. And then out of that, just like you learned with fashion, think about, okay, what about this filmmaker's aesthetic really is different from mine? Instead of getting trapped in the comparison game by just saying, oh, I'm just not good enough. I'll never be as good as them. I'm just going to unfollow them so I don't see them in my feed. Don't do that. Like, go to their feed and say, oh, I noticed that they have this specific look to their compositions. They use a lot of negative space. They use a lot of flash. They use a lot of black and white. They use a lot of grain. They use a lot of kind of haliation and blooming in some of their color. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to focus on one thing at a time. And then before you know it, you have someone stumbling on your Instagram and they're like, oh my goodness, they dress kind of like how I would dress. They have a similar composition style and aesthetic and coloring. They would be great for a second shooter. Yeah. And so it's really kind of breaking all those things down, which it massively helps.
And that's like kind of why we built dress code into the contracts for Second Society.
Ooh,
because like, it's just something that we kind of forget to talk about before the wedding day. And then you're like driving to the wedding venue and you're like, oh, I never told my second shooter what to wear. Like, I hope he shows up in something that, first of all, matches me, matches my brand, but, isn't falling apart. Or like sneakers that are like 4 years old, like I've had that happen. And you're just like, oh man, like this isn't so important. Because not only do you have the couple looking at you, but you have 200 other guests that there's probably potential future clients in there that are looking, watching you as you film, how you're interacting with the couple, how they're making you feel, and they're prospecting you, whether you know it or not, right? And so you have no say over what your second shooter does, and you're just like kind of trusting them that they're going to show up. And so that's why it's super important to address those physical things firsthand before you.
It's like they matter. They matter. Yeah. When I'm first working with a second, or it depends, because sometimes I'm hiring a shooter who I may be paying a little less, and I know they don't know as much, but they have potential. And so for that shooter, what I'm mainly looking for with them is that they understand my style and that they're eager. They're putting in above and beyond. I love when I'm hiring like a third shooter or maybe an initial second shooter, and they want to come to my house the day before and like understand my whole system. I love when they take it upon themselves and DM me after and say, hey, I would love to go over my footage that I shot for you because I really want to improve. So
Yeah.
if you're a beginner, that is your greatest asset, is hunger and willing to show that you're teachable. Because an experienced shooter, funny enough, the thing they love most is being respected and feeling like what they have to say is extremely valuable. And if they get a sense from you that you are eating that up and that you're actually taking their suggestions, they will continue to hire you. So that's like one category. The second is sometimes I need to spend the money and I just want someone who I can literally say, I trust you with this whole half of the day. Just do it. And so in that case, I'm spending more money. And I mean, really, I feel like there's really nothing to be said for that shooter other than they just have to be an extreme, it has to be almost like a clone of myself to where they're great with people. I can trust them to talk with a couple, with a coordinator. If I'm not there, I can rely on their footage. And, like we all know, but I'll say it again, I want the exposure to be great. I want there to be no shaking. Of course, mistakes happen, but by and large, it shouldn't be all overexposed and it shouldn't be all shaky. And I think for the people I'm spending a lot of money for, I'm not just hiring a shooter, I'm hiring an artist. So if you want to make more money as a second shooter, you have to not be a shooter. I'd say shooters I'll hire shooters for $200 to $600, kind of in that range. But if I'm hiring an artist, they're typically going to be, $1,000 plus. And if you want to be considered an artist, your compositions have to be interesting. They have to be unique. You have to have a unique perspective. You have to have a voice. Because at that point, I'm not really paying for your technical skills. I'm paying for your voice that is actually going to enhance the overall story.
That's really cool. The difference between a second shooter and an artist. I love that. Tell me, the one question I had for you was, how do we transfer from being a second shooter who doesn't get to work with my own footage to being able to create a portfolio for myself out of the weddings that I've second shot? Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'll keep it short. If you second shoot a lot, just ask your lead shooters, ask the companies that hire you, say, hey, can I use the footage for my own portfolio? Some will say no, and a lot will say yes, surprisingly. If in stipulation of, I won't tag the couple, I won't post anything without your approval, as well as I won't post anything until you share everything from the wedding. That is an extremely simple hack, and I do that with my shooters. So that's one of the selling points of, hey, work with me, and then also I'll let you use the footage because I know that was invaluable to me starting out. So just ask.
What's some inspiration or just any education you can bring to shooters out there that are like, hey, I want to do this. I'm second year in full time. How do I make this a 20-year career? And then even after that, what does that look like for me? Is this a career that I can really get into, create a family out of this career, make a long lasting life for myself? I'm like, how do I set myself up for success in the future?
Man, what a question.
Loaded.
Yeah. It's like, how do I be an incredible filmmaker, raise a family doing this, never suffer burnout, and just be perfect all the time? Give me the answer, David.
Here we go. Listen in.
Oh man, so many ways I could go about this. I think it's the wrong question to ask yourself of how can I be the most successful filmmaker? Because that's the question I asked myself, and it just led to a lot of heartbreak because my worth in life was tied to how much money was in my bank account, how good my films were. And there was a point, really honestly, where the bank account was doing great. My films were doing awesome. I was getting the followers I wanted. All from the outside perspective, the business looked extremely successful. And so the typical answer would be, do all the things necessary to get there, and then you'll never have a business that's failing. Funny enough, I did all the things to get there, and I got there. And all that ended with, I got divorced because I wasn't present with my family, and there's so many other things, but I had all the trappings of success. And literally by getting that was what threw a blue shell in my whole business, essentially, to throw in a little Mario Kart term. And so it's almost less about the specific strategies and more about, why are you doing this? If the reason you're doing this is to make a lot of money, is to make a name for yourself, it will work for a while, but it will not last, because our hearts were not made to worship work or money or possessions, because they're not the most valuable things. And you
Mm.
will burn out eventually. And it's so funny. It's like proverbial in a way, that the very thing you are grasping at most is the first thing to lose, first thing for you to lose, because you're so focused on it. And so
Wow.
really the way to be successful in this industry, in any industry, is to focus on the things that really matter, like serving others, loving your spouse, loving your kids, loving God, being involved in a church community and things like that. And really asking yourself, regardless of money, how can I bring the most value to a specific group of people?
Mm.
And don't do that to the detriment of what you've determined is even more valuable than that: your family, your friends, your relationship with God.
Yeah.
And because you may not be a wedding filmmaker for all of your life, and that's okay. But if you tie your worth to being a wedding filmmaker, a successful one, you will hold on to that idol, essentially,
Mm.
even if it's going downhill, because
Yeah.
that's your identity. Whereas what you really see is, man, maybe I need to get a normal job, or maybe I need to shift my business and go more into corporate work for the sake of my family. But if your whole identity is wrapped up in this wedding filmmaker image, you're going to burn everything to the ground. And
Right.
so that, I think, is at the heart of that question. Is first, you got to have a really solid why of why you're doing this, and make it something that transcends weddings. So that would be like my first answer. And then two would be a more practical and more like hands-on, is you really got to understand money, because I've been in this, like you said, I think it's been like 15 years. And so I've been in really great seasons and really bad seasons. And one thing that is constant in life, and especially as a business owner, is change. That is the only thing you can reliably rely on, is that things will change.
Mm.
And there's going to be peaks and valleys. And what I see so often is beginners will start out and they'll go through just the drudgery of building their company, and they'll have 2 successful years, and they'll think, oh, I finally broke through. I took that course, I applied everything. I did that coaching, I applied everything, and now it's finally working, which is great that it's working. But they think that it's because of what they've learned, they're now invincible. And they have great years. They have money in the bank, they're charging the most they've ever charged. And then they start to increase their lifestyle. They start to increase how they think about life. And then a bad season hits, because it always does. It always hits. It always does. And their whole business vanishes. And they think, what the heck happened? It's
Mm.
because they didn't account in their plan for those low seasons. I'll be sitting with someone who's been doing this for 10 plus years, or 6 or 7 years, and they have great work, great portfolio, they're getting bookings. But they say, the thing that keeps me up at night, the thing that just wrecks my soul, is I've been doing this for tons of time, and I feel like I have nothing to show for it in my bank account. And
Mm.
I'm still just spinning the wheel to pay off my debts, to pay off my mortgage, and things like that. And so one of the things that I suggest filmmakers to do is start investing, start setting money aside. Do not put all your money into the business, because by doing that, you're saying, this is the thing that matters absolutely most to me. And if you put all your money into it and it vanishes, you will have nothing. you will have like nothing to show for all this effort. So what I started doing from day one of my business was, basically every year I put a portion of everything I made, whether it was a horrible year or a great year, a portion of everything I made to investments, to saving. So
Mm.
at the end of 7 years, no matter how horrible or great it was, no matter where I'm at in the industry or where I'm not at in the industry, I could say, wow, I served couples well. I had a ton of fun doing it. And now look, I have something to show for it, that my investments are doing well, my savings are doing well. And it seems so practical. It seems so countercultural to, we talk about just growing the business at all costs, getting that coaching, buying the courses, just grow, 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 grow. Where we got to focus on just the tactile things, like having savings, having investments. And so for me, it's around, I aim to put at least 15 or so percent of my income every year into either savings or investments. And then I also, because my main goal is not just being the best wedding filmmaker in the world, I also put around 10% just to causes I care about, to churches, to community, to things like that. So that even at the end of, 10 years, I could say, well, I invested well into the things that I truly. So that's kind of where I would go with that question.
Like you said, I think really good to take that assessment of say like, hey, what are my priorities in my life? For me, same thing, man. Like God is always first, family is always second, business always three. You know what I mean? Friends and family, or hangouts or whatever it might be is after that, right? So like every single day when I wake up, do I take care of those priorities in the order that I actually put them in my life down on paper, right? And like where am I investing my money first and foremost when the check comes in, right? Like, is it investing in God? Is it investing in family? Is it investing into the business? And then from there on out, am I doing the fun, outdoor activities or whatever it is that you want to do? The surfboard, the fourth surfboard that I bought. You know what I mean?
Just whatever. A great time of confession. Just to talk about your surfboard addiction.
I got 30 days to return it.
Yeah, that's great. You can use it every day and return it on the 29th day. It's good. That's it. That old Costco return policy.
Yeah. And then another thing you said too, which is like so huge, dude, is just like not getting set in your ways of like, oh, I'm successful because of the things I've done in my past. Is like always having that mindset of like, dude, there is going to be a season to come that it's not going to be as great, right? Like nobody predicted COVID was going to happen, but the people that like were successful after that were the people that said, first of all, I built up a savings account so that I can keep moving in my business and keep investing in it. And then also like, what are the new ways of getting business that I haven't really ventured into yet? You know what I mean? That I'm going to need to do now that I haven't done in the past, right?
Yeah, that's huge. I'm so glad you said that. I mean, everyone knows this, but that starts with just saying, where do I suck? Where am I not good? Where could I improve? And, maybe you're not the best decor filmmaker, and planners are really looking for that. Like humble yourself and look at the competition and say, they are actually better at this. What can I learn? Book a mentorship session with your competition and say, hey, I suck at this. You're great at it. How do you do this? And I find most people who have been doing it for over 5 years will not do that. They will not book a mentorship session with someone but that's their competition. But that is literally the best thing.
And it goes back to that point of just like, how easy it is for you to spend $200, $300, $500 on just like a random thing that you probably don't need, but you'll never invest that money into your business of like a mentorship session that's going to like make you money, right? It's a different type of investment, right? Like
absolutely,
education is just so huge and people are so afraid to invest in it. But on the grand scheme of things, when you look back and say, like $1,000 for a course or whatever, I can spend $1,000 on a icon pass to go snowboarding for this year, and it does not give back to me. You know what I mean? Right. It does not make my business fun for sure. But that's beside the point.
Yeah.
It's just like, I think it's so easy to spend money on the things that just make us happy in an instant and less about like saying, no, I'm going to invest in this because I know it's going to bring me joy later down the road, 5-10 years from now. You know what I mean? You're going to be much happier.
Totally. And one question I ask myself is, I think so many filmmakers have a short-term view and they look at what they do as what it's going to net them 2 days from now or a week from now. But start to think about the choices that you make in terms of who am I becoming by making this choice. By making this choice today and continuing to make it for the next year, where does that put me 5 years from now?
Right.
Both in the positive and the negative. I think it's so easy to think about the positive. Oh yeah, if I continually buy courses, continue to upgrade my cameras, then I'll be a better filmmaker 5 years from now. And that's pretty easy to conceptualize. But what filmmakers don't do is the negative of that. If I continue to not show up on social media for a couple weeks, okay, that's okay. For a month, okay. For a couple months, maybe we can come back from that. But then it becomes a habit in the negative. And then all of a sudden you have 5 years of not showing up on social media. and you have a massive problem on your hand. And so really figuring out, who am I becoming by all the choices I'm making today, and being honest and saying, am I becoming the kind of person I want to be or don't want to be by what I'm doing on a daily basis?
Dang. So true, man. And time management, like there's a little things, right? Like social media is just so huge. It's like, I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like spending a half hour or an hour making something impactful for social media. It's just like not what I want to do. There's so many social media managers out there that will help take your content that you have and break it into reels or whatever it is, or posts, and they'll post it for you. Costs money, obviously. It's an investment, but if it's something that you absolutely hate doing every single day and you dread it, outsource it. Go make that money back doing the thing that you love, and you can reinvest into the business, right? But
because you could essentially just send the social media hard drive with all your like timelines of finished projects, and they can open it and just clip it up.
100%. And if that's all you show, that's fine. You know what I mean? But at least it's something. At least you're showing up. And so if you can give them all, 40 or 50 films that you absolutely love and want to, continue working at those venues and continue working with those
and
types
just
of
say
clients,
make as much content as possible out of these weddings.
Yeah. And I mean, it's as easy as taking screenshots of the films and then making a carousel reel out of it, right? And then posting that and tagging.
That's actually a brilliant idea.
There we go.
So smart.
Definitely highly suggest outsourcing anything that you don't want to do. But on top of that, with time management, it's so easy for us to just be like, oh, I'm just going to kind of slack off or mess around or go do something fun today. You know what I mean? Like I've worked 6 hours on a film, 8 hours on a film and missed that spot. But I bet if you really took another look at your life again and said, how much time am I actually wasting?
Right.
Either scrolling, right? Like the amount of times I've caught myself scrolling for an hour instead of making content creation for an hour. Like, oh my gosh, talk about like the biggest waste of time, right?
I see a lot of filmmakers, they have the rhythm of social media down. They're posting every day, but they're still stuck at a couple hundred views a video. They're really not getting more bookings. They're showing up every day. They're using all their free time to post on social media. But what they don't have is the vision and the voice and the creativity. Whereas I see other people who maybe show up once a month, twice a month, but everything they post has such a vision, a voice, and a creativity. And they have 10,000 followers in literally 6 months. They're actually working less in terms of posting, but they're working more in terms of vision, mindset, and creativity. So you kind of got to figure out, where are you? I think it's an honest question of, do you feel like you have the vision, mindset, and creativity? So your problem probably is consistency. But if you feel like you have the consistency and you're not seeing results, the problem probably is the vision, mindset, and creativity.
So good. Number one, not put all your eggs in one basket. Number two, don't idolize your business. Be ready and be, I think like I view life, honestly, man, like as you have your hands kind of open. And like for me, like whatever God puts in my hands, like, thank you. That was amazing. I'm going to leave this open. And if you do decide to take it away, or if we do decide to go on a different season or whatever it might be, and you take it out of my hands, like, that's okay. I never hold on to it.
Experientially though, do you feel like you actually, like when he does take something away, how does it actually feel?
It's obviously hard. But I think ultimately you have to have a really good, mature heart and mindset of like really trusting in him. Cause I've had that happen. You know what I mean? Like multiple times in my life where he takes something away. And it's like, okay, like it's just like, we have a daughter, and it's like, there's certain things I'll take away from her or not let her do. And it's never out of the act of like, I don't love you and you don't deserve to have this. It's like, I want you to learn a lesson, right? Like I want you to build up character and discipline that like, not everything is good for you. Or I have something that's behind my back that I have something better for you. You know what I mean? Like, if you do this now and then I give you this thing later, it builds up a thought of like, oh, I'm entitled to everything whenever I want it at any given time, right? And so I think that's the same thing with God, is that like he absolutely loves us and wants the best for us, but not everything is meant for us at a specific time, or maybe that a season might be over and he's got something better for you along the way. And so that's how I view life.
Yeah, I love that. That's such I feel like every filmmaker needs to hear that specifically. And if we can conceptualize the idea of a good father on this earth, that he will withhold something or take something away because he has your best interest in mind and he has something way better and a reason for doing it. If we can conceptualize that with our earthly father, how much more so a perfect good father who always does what's best. And also, I think even in the view of a child, so often as a child, they don't understand why the parent is withholding or taking something away. And they think it's because you hate me. And even if the parent was able to sit with the child, there's no way a 40-year-old parent can sit with a 5-year-old and explain, I am taking away this privilege because when you're 25, if you continue to act this way, you're going to be an entitled brat. And like a 5-year-old has no capacity to understand that. How much more so a human being and like the creator of the universe, to where he couldn't even like attempt to explain why he's doing something because he's so other than us in that way. And we just have to trust. In the same way a child says, Dad, through your repeated actions of faithfulness towards me, I know you have my best in mind. So even though I hate this, I'm going to trust you anyway.
Yeah. Or as my 3-year-old daughter would say, okay. I would love to kind of just hear, I know you have this like entire course set out to like help filmmakers. Obviously I would hope that some of the stuff that you're saying in today's podcast is probably in there and probably going a little bit more in depth, but can you give us like an overview of like what the course entails and who it's for?
Yeah, for sure. So I've just loved every aspect of this podcast because we're really getting to the heart behind the business. And so that was really what I wanted to do with this business course. Is I didn't want to make a whole nother course only about strategies. Like, of course they're in there. There's guidelines in order to have a successful business. But the whole point of this course is to teach the why behind the business, to teach how to create a business that is sustainable, that is life-giving, that doesn't become, a monster of your own creation, and to do it in a way that is profitable. So the course is called The Profitable Filmmaker. And the little tagline is how to make $100,000 a year as a wedding filmmaker in any market, location, or economy. Now, of course, that is the surface goal. And I kind of do that to get people's attention, to be like, oh, that's something I would want. And that's definitely a goal that I'm going to help you achieve. Deeper than that, it's not just a checkbox. It's not just, oh, do these 5 things and you're there. I want to get you there in a way that is life-giving. And I do coaching as part of this course. Every month, we have a tiny little group where it's usually 10 to 15 people. And we are talking about, where are you at in your business? How can I keep you accountable? How's your family doing? Okay, you just went through the website and branding module. Let's pull up your website. And as a class, let's figure out, is this really not only good, but because I've known you over the past couple months and I know who you are and what you're passionate about, is this website true to your heart? Are these films true to who you actually want to present yourself to be? And that's really the part of the course that I just get so passionate about, is that one-on-one, that group setting. And the course is everything. We go over sales, mindset, marketing, SEO, advertising, profitability, investing, time management, and all in a holistic way. And so that's a little short pitch for the course. If you're listening to that and you're just like, man, that sounds exactly what I need in this season, then I would love to get to know you. And I'm sure Jimmy will put kind of links to the information below, but that's a little pitch for that. And I think depending on when this podcast launches, the course should be either coming out or out, and then the cart will be open for a few days after it launches, because I like to keep the group really small so that it can be very intentional.
Yeah, definitely want to do my best to get the podcast out in time. Man, what a pleasure to have you on this podcast, man. Thank you for taking so much time out of your day to kind of just sit down with me and talk.
Dude, yeah. I mean, thank you for having me on. This is incredible. And I love just that we got to the heart of some really important things. And I think that's more often what I'm all about now, is wanting to talk to filmmakers' hearts, because they're ignored so often. And I think if you get the heart right, everything else will start to open up.
Thank you guys so much for watching this week's episode. If any part of this podcast was impactful to you, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as share it on social media. Make sure to tag us at secondsociety.io. Also, if you're a wedding photographer or videographer and you're not part of Second Society yet, make sure to join the family and the community of high-level lead and second shooters found throughout the entire world. Until next time, guys, stay blessed, and I hope you have an incredible week.